I was muted. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel to our live reaction and instant review of Nottingham Forest 0, Chelsea 1, of Chelsea qualifying for the Champions League for the first time since the 2021-2022 season. Or was it a 2022-2023 season? It doesn't matter. I am buzzing. We are back in the Champions League. What a weird game it was. We played Forest and somehow we were parking a bus by the end. But I'll take it. In the end, we didn't even have to win because United beat Villa somehow. And even more bafflingly, Newcastle lost at home to Everton. So all the stress was kind of nothing, but we got the job done. And even better, I am joined once again by CFC Gem. Just call you Gem.
Yes.
Thanks, bro, for coming back on. It's been a hot minute, but what a day to make your return. Honestly, I mean, there was so much negativity over the last few months, right? Everybody was writing us off, ourselves included, right? My God, who would have seen this coming? All of a sudden, we end up being in the top 4, ahead of Newcastle, ahead of Villa, ahead of all of them. Well, I say all of them, ahead of all but 3. Are you as buzzing as I am, bro?
I am. I'm just annoying a couple of people that are rivals in the group chat and they can't take it. They're trying to throw the fact that we're excellent. We've won the UCL trophy, but it's not the point. At the end of the day, these people didn't predict us to be in Champions League. That's the whole point. It was no one predicted Chelsea to be in the Champions League at the beginning, based on our previous seasons. And at the end of the day, we got it done. I keep saying it and I'll say it again. Rivals hold that, number one. Definitely hold that because none of you expect us to do it. And today was just a really dogged performance, wasn't it, Laurenz? It was more about the mentality and getting stuck in more than the actual individual performances, even though there were some good. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it. I'm just very happy that we've managed to make Champions League football. That's where we should be, man.
That is where we should be. By the way, guys, I've turned up my microphone a little bit. Tell me if I sound any worse or different or louder than usual. But yeah, I mean, Jem, you summed it up very well. Obviously, a few people in the chat already. Joel said, well done, Maresca, tactic spot on. Haswan says, yes, we done it. I'm just going to call you Cathole because I'm assuming you're trying to bait me, but come on, Chelsea, Champions League, here we go. Dylan says, can't wait for the Champions League next season. Hopefully, I will be going to my first Champions League match next season. And Grant says, shout out Anthony Taylor for not trying to rob us. He actually didn't. It's weird. We lost, our last 4 away games with Anthony Taylor as the referee. We've won all of them. I mean, that is shocking. That is shocking. I mean, Jem, just quickly, obviously, we will talk about this game as a whole. And obviously, we got the job done today. But obviously, when it's about where you finish, it's about the whole season. So, and because I haven't had the pleasure of talking to you in detail about how the season has gone, where do you stand with it? Because obviously, we were, let's say, really good until kind of mid-December. We're second, could have gone top just before Christmas, but then kind of started falling away. And then our performances didn't really pick up that much. But our results did, because my God, our final run-in results is almost unbelievable, if I'm being honest.
It's old school Chelsea, wasn't it? Where we're not playing well, but we're somehow managing to win games. Whether it was 1-0, the 2-1 at Fulham when we came back was a big game. This last 4 games before we came into it, a lot of people were saying Chelsea have got the hardest run. I don't see them making Champions League. They're holding on for dear life, trying to get through that period. And out of them 4 games, we've won 3 and lost 1. Yeah, and that was before obviously the Fulham game. There was the Ipswich game? I can't remember. I can't remember the list, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, we haven't really been in what I would say great form, even though if you look at the stats, the defensive stats show that we're the 3rd best team in the league defensively, which is ironic, quite funny. But, from attacking impotence, we've really struggled. And we know Jackson's been out and he came back in and done that stupid elbow at Newcastle and he's been out since. But the one thing that I've noticed with us at the moment is that even though we have, and again, I don't think we really played well. I don't think we have done for a little while. I think the Liverpool game was probably the one game where I'd say, well, I thought we played quite well overall as a team collectively. This was a different way of winning, and that's the big thing. It's about being able to win in different ways. That even when you're struggling to attack or players are not pulling their weight up front, but still getting stuck in and trying to help the team and whatever. That's what we've seen. That's what we've been seeing throughout this period, especially over, is it 7 games before Newcastle that we hadn't lost in the Premier League? I can't even remember if that was the stat, but it was a long,
wasn't it? No,
it was
Newcastle.
Arsenal.
So if you take Newcastle,
yeah, if you took before Newcastle, it was Arsenal back in March, I think it was. Yeah. So it goes to show that, as much as people want to, moan about Maresca's tactics or moan about what we're doing with the squad in terms of setup, he's managed to get the job done, and that's all I care about. It's just about getting the W at this moment in time, and that's what we've done for the last couple of months, to be quite honest with you.
Yes, that's exactly it. I mean, I was trying my very hardest to get our fixture run on screen, but unfortunately, FOTMob has decided to split it into screens. So I've got the last 3 games here and the ones before that after that. No idea why they're doing this. And unfortunately, I've not on the quick been able to find a website that shows it any better than this. But yeah, obviously these last 3. And who on earth would have expected us to now end up finishing ahead of Newcastle after losing to Newcastle? But obviously beat Forest 1-0, beat United 1-0. We got a lot of 1-0 wins recently. Djurgården, obviously, the Liverpool game you touched on, 1-0 against Everton, the 2-1 late win against Fulham, which is kind of what saved and started our comeback at the end of the season. But, obviously the Ipswich, I mean, that was a point that could have been important. In the end, it was, less relevant. But, we certainly, the defense shored up towards the end, which was huge, which was really, really big in my opinion. The fact that we managed to at least sort that out towards the end of the season, because, my God, it could have gone badly. I mean, when you look at it here, Forest supposedly had more expected goals. They had ever so slightly more possession. They had more shots, but we had more chances. Obviously, once we took the lead, it was, the impetus was on Forest and not anymore on us. So we definitely have that advantage. But what did you make of this game in particular, Jem? Or before we get into the game, I guess, let's talk about the lineup, because there was one, if you will, small surprise, because Romeo Lavia, of course, not available because not selected for the Conference League squad for the Conference League final coming up on Wednesday. So with that, I was slightly surprised that he didn't start today, if I'm being honest, especially with Reece James playing the full 90, and I would assume also playing on Wednesday, at the fact that obviously Lavia cannot. So did that surprise you? I guess Tyreek George coming out of the team and Sancho replacing him in the starting 11. Was it roughly still what you expected, or was anything surprising?
Yeah. It was for me personally. It was the lineup that I expected. I wasn't actually shocked that Lavia didn't start. I kind of thought we needed to. It sounds very weird, but I thought playing Reece James was more important than having Lavia in the game, in this type of game, just purely because of the way that Nottingham Forest like to attack. And we know they like to use their wings. They like to use speed to get in behind, whipping balls, which they're trying to do today with Chris Wood. And Reece James, like the end of the day, he's our captain. He should be playing in these big games anyway. I know we've been monitoring him for the last couple of months, playing him in Conference League games, and scratching our heads going, why is he not playing the Premier League games? But in this moment, I think it made sense to line up how we did. Sancho was the only one where I was like, could he start, or would he maybe play Tyreek George off the left? But Sancho did start. And I mean, system-wise, it made a lot of sense. Like I said, it was a very dogged performance, and it wasn't about sort of individual brilliance. It was just like, even our goal, it was quite a funny goal, really, wasn't it? Because it came into net. I think it was Neto who then, I don't know if he was it a shot, or did he actually see Colwill at the back post? That's what I can't remember.
Good question. Like I'm also not sure. I would love to hear his truthful answer. I'm not sure if we'll ever hear his truthful answer to that question, if I'm being honest. Yeah. But I mean, you're spot on. The goal was a little bit, luck coming our way, obviously. I mean, if you deep the game, just to quickly touch on my end, I get 100% what you're saying in terms of Reece James. It's just, yes, we needed him for this game today, but we also arguably need him even that little bit more on Wednesday, because Lavia is not available on Wednesday. And obviously, as much as today was crucial, if we all of a sudden don't win on Wednesday, we'll be like, well, this was crucial too. Do you know what I mean? Which I'm still very confident that we will win on Wednesday. And I assume Reece will be able to play both. Otherwise, I very much doubt he would have played the full 90 today. But at the end of the day, I mean, they got the job done. Obviously, the toast in for Chalobah, that change happened last week, obviously. Then he did really well against Manchester United. And again, he did really, really well today. I guess Chalobah would have also done a great job, in my opinion. Tosin just gave the ball away twice, but otherwise he was phenomenal. His line-breaking passes, just his defending, clearing balls away, winning aerials. Him and Colwill together were absolutely phenomenal. So was Reece James, by the way, in a defensive note. I mean, they were all pretty damn unbelievable. I can't lie. All pretty damn unbelievable. I mean, there was something going around in our group chat, Jem. I guess we might as well touch on it, because there won't be so many other negatives to talk about. Cole Palmer. I would just try to get the kind of real positions up in a minute. Him playing in this left half space, almost dropping into being the left back at times. What did you make of that?
I don't like him there. I think he's always been better off the right. I think if you've watched the influential Palmer, where he's been able to be more creative and sort of dictate the game more in the better pocket areas, is off the right. I actually think Enzo should have played on the left and Palmer should have been on the right with Madueke down that wing. Him and Madueke have always had that sort of chemistry, and we saw it earlier in the season when him and Madueke would link down that wing, you know. And today's game just showed it again. I think he just struggled to build up any sort of chemistry going forward with Sancho. They tried to like sometimes do 1-2s and run off each other, but it just wasn't feeling it, to be kind of sure. And I've seen Enzo play there with Sancho and Cucurella, and all three of them have played. It was just a better chemistry all round with the three of them when I watched them. So yeah, I just think Cole Palmer's just, I don't know. It's very weird when we speak about him, because he's not the same player as he was last season. He's kind of just been like in this form. I say he's rut, but in this sort of form for a while, where he's just not been as effective as we, that we're used to seeing him. But at the same time, he, like today again, he works so hard, man, non-stop running up and down the pitch, trying to help the team, winning tackles, getting back. And I think they were all doing that. But it's just very hard for us to attack at the moment, when I think we just struggle without having someone that's physical that can then like help them get into the game. We're picking it up to Neto, who's just getting bullied, all the time. It's like Tyreek George against Man United. It just, it worked for a little bit earlier in the season, but you can't play like that all the time. It just becomes very predictable. And I think that does not help us when we try and break forward, even though I think sometimes we overthink it in the final third, but it affects Palmer. It just affects Palmer as well. And that's a big thing, for me. You're muted. You're muted.
Thanks for that. You said a whole sentence. Yeah, I was going to say I completely agree. We've had a fair few games where we've had Palmer in his left half space and kind of been unhappy with it. I think a game like today, we had it very similarly to when we played Brighton at home. Obviously, in that game, I know Palmer scored 4 goals, but we still were doing this a lot, but just on the other side. It's a bit of a case of what the opponents do and where they give us space. And it was a lot of it down here. And obviously, partly because Cucurella drifted into midfield. But then I guess you still have the decision. You could have Sancho drop and Palmer at least drift wide if you need him on the left, right? Because down here, I mean, yeah, you would hope that he can get himself involved with some maybe over-the-top balls, through balls, in swingers, because obviously being on his stronger left foot from this perspective, from this position, but it just didn't work. He just barely got on the ball. He barely looked bothered when he got on the ball. I don't know. It just doesn't really work. I mean, sometimes Enzo provides a bit more of a goal threat on the right, or a bit more maybe of an assist threat off the right. But I still think the other way around, it just makes more sense. I think partly it is to do with who's shifting around where. That, like when Cucurella comes into midfield, Palmer plays off the left. When Reece James or whoever else the right back is shifts into midfield, then Palmer has recently mostly played off the right, if I remember this correctly. So, yeah, I don't really know, but I mean, at the end of the day, I guess it worked. I mean, let me just find this comment. Catol said, ridiculous form at the end of the season. Maresca putting in or off peak Jose performances. Is that how you took it as well? We just looked at the results a minute ago, Jem. A lot of 1-0s recently, obviously against Spurs, against Everton, against Man United, now against Forest today as well. Is that for you a positive or a negative?
I think one of the things that we've always questioned this group of players is mentality and being able to win in different ways. Every time we've gone behind, in the past, we've just bottled it and lost 2-3, 4-0. We've not really shown any sort of grit to be able to try and find a way back into games. And even though we're not scoring a lot of goals, we're still trying to find that way just to make one chance in the game and take it. And again, like today, like against Everton, like against Tottenham, like against Man United with Cucurella, like we're just finding the right moment to take them chances. So the one thing I would say about this group of players, and I think it's a positive thing, is that they're showing that there's a bit of mentality. There's a little bit of like a winning mentality behind, to have the grit to, even though that they're not winning comfortably, even at 0-0, they know that they, once they get that opportunity, that they take that chance. And once we do, it's then on after how we defend, how structurally we try and block the spaces, how hard we work off the ball. And today's game was another example again of that. When things ain't going the way it's good, Enzo playing all these fizzy balls everywhere and it looks all pretty, Madueke beating people easily, Caicedo doing what he does, Reece James, whatever. Like when it's not running like we like to see it in terms of flowing going forward, that they can get stuck in, they can work as a team, and they can bring and produce these kind of results. And it's so important when you're going to go into like next season potentially trying to compete, potentially, that's the thing.
That is quite literally it. That is quite literally it. I mean, I've put it up there. I want to highlight this comment here by, who was it? Joe. I will get to more of your comments in a minute, guys. Don't worry about it. Joe says, can we please give credit to Maresca? All that pressure and the tactics were spot on. Now, I asked you about the season overall a few minutes ago. Maresca himself is it's a hot topic with some Chelsea fans. I'm not quite sure where you stand on him, Jem. I'm not even 1,000% sure where I stand on it, because there's certainly things that I like about him, but then there's been certain comments that really pissed me off throughout the season when he said we're not ready to win the league. Yes. Was he right? Yes. Did he kill our form anyway? Yes, he also did that. And then when in one interview, he says the owners never told me we need to finish top 4. A week after, he all of a sudden said it's always been the goal to finish top 4 or Champions League anyway. I'm just like, just stay a bit consistent with your comments. You know what I mean? That's all I'm really asking for. But at the end of the day, like, we finished on 6 points more than we finished last season. In my opinion, we still have a worse squad than we had last season because of letting Thiago Silva go, letting Conor Gallagher go. And then I think in January, we hampered the squad again. And I keep using this analogy, almost like during the January transfer window, we decided, it's a bit easy. Let's turn the difficulty up on FIFA career mode. Like that's what our January transfer window felt to me by, not buying a second striker, by deciding to let João Felix go when he was half decent in form. Keeping Nkunku has been a complete waste of space and time for the entirety of the second half of the season. So does Maresca deserve credit, or did he only just do what the squad is capable of anyway? Like it's such a tough comparison, because it's like, you see, he did a better job than Poch, because Poch didn't have Europe. And yes, you can say it's Conference League and he played the kids anyway. But I think it does make a difference that almost every week the main players did still have to travel. I mean, we had bloody Caicedo flying out to Astana. You know, Poch wasn't doing that last year. He was just playing 1 week to the other. And yes, we made it further in the cups, but it's still not the same as flying all the way to Astana. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So does he deserve credit for you, or are you kind of still on the fence about him? Where do you stand on Enzo Maresca and what he's now, I guess,
my prediction has always been Champions League and win the conference. We've still got to do that and win the conference, obviously. And for me, that will be a very well, in terms of where we are and our sort of, route to wherever we're going to go to is a good season for us. I think we forget a couple of things when it comes to Maresca. I think we forget the fact that, the recruitment on the board were the reason why Maresca managed Chelsea. They're the ones that chose him and brought him into this football club. Did I think he was going to make mistakes throughout the season? Yes. I think we underestimate the sheer size of the squad that he had at the beginning of the season and how he had to manage that and look after that for an inexperienced manager. And I keep pointing it out, a very inexperienced manager at this game. He's, he done okay at Leicester in the Championship and he's managed to get a bit of silverware. Well done to him. But in terms of what challenges he had with Chelsea, I mean, how many times have we seen managers just falter in the moments and the decision making and whatever? And listen, I agree with you. I don't like some of his press conferences and what he said, and I do think that's something he has to work on individually in himself moving forward. And I think he will. His decision making with the squad, I was a little bit meh when it came to Nkunku, because I just never understood how this guy that was so good over there, that looked alert, that could crash the box and provide goals, all of a sudden just couldn't. I don't know what, but I don't know what version of Nkunku we got at Chelsea this season. I just don't really understand it. And then, is it a system thing? Do you blame Maresca? Is it a bit of both? I think it probably is. Don't get me wrong. However, there's been question marks about how he's managed it. And I think, to be fair to him, I think up to this point, he's done very well. I think he's managed it very well. He's managed to keep a lot of players on side. I agree with you. We've struggled again in the midfield because, again, if you think about it, we've had to play with Enzo and Caicedo for most of the season again. They've had to play most games because Lavia's not been available.
All 38 Premier League games.
There you go. And that's without Lavia again, who kind of let us down this season for not being able to be available and allow us to have that versatility. There's been so many questions with how we've got to where we are now. But the point being is that he's done that, and he's tactically learn. He's shown so much flexibility for me, which has been a lot different to the Poches and whatever, and how he approaches games as well. It's not always just been like Poch used to just be, it was just very, we lost that game, we're just going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing it. And it just never worked. At least with this guy, he kind of like, for example, we had no Jackson. We was out. Mark Yu got injured the same time as Jackson in the same game. His solution was to play Neto up front, which no one would have predicted, but it actually got us through that period to a degree, when we were struggling to attack. And it was just little things like that where tactically, I think he's showing that he has the flexibility in his game. whilst knowing probably that he still needs A, B, C, and D to strengthen the team and see the best of his system. And that's why it was very important for him to get a tick from me. It's very important for him to tick the box of getting Champions League and trying to win this Conference League.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, we need to go win the Conference League. It's really difficult. It's really difficult. What you're talking about with tactical flexibility is super interesting, because there is certainly some people that would completely disagree with you on this, because they just see, okay, we pretty much every game invert a fullback into somewhere, and the other fullback isn't allowed to bomb up the wing, has to kind of play centre back. And obviously people don't like that. People say we're wasting Reece James. People say, I don't know, whatever they're making up, even though they're ignoring the fact that, yes, maybe Reece James isn't quite at his peak. Number one, it keeps him fit. Number two, if we did it the other way around, Cucurella wouldn't be at his peak. Now, sure, I understand Chelsea fans prefer Reece James to Cucurella, but if you've watched the season, you know Cucurella is one of our very most important players. So I guess playing a system to suit him isn't half bad, because if it gets the best out of him, it does help. But like you said, it did change it up. When we play a back five, there's a different shape to when we play a back four. Yeah. When we, adapted it, sometimes we played Reece James as right centre back. Sometimes we play him in midfield. Sometimes we move Cucurella around. Sometimes, with Chalobah, with Tosin, with Levi Colwill as well. Obviously, if we had Wesley Fofana for the majority of the season, things would have been a little bit different as well. As much as he's very injury prone, you could see when we had him, we were usually better.
System.
Yeah, exactly, and we just didn't have quite the same profile.
He did improve profile player. Like certain players this season that struggled last season under Poch were improved. Caicedo this season consistently, again, very good. Cucurella's performance against last season, again, all right, it might suit in terms of system how Maresca likes to do things, but his overall performances have become more consistent and he improved. Enzo Fernandez, this guy I was being told last season's not good for the Premier League and he needs to go. Well, now he's not only improved in the position that he's playing in, but he's also now crashing the box and he's contributed to a number of goals. And he's created 78 chances this season. I think Palmer's got 80 something. So him and Palmer are our top creators in the whole team. Madueke playing off the left. Where did that come from? And in moments looked so quite good at home in some games. He's done some good things, I think. Yeah, I do think he's done some good things in trying to get the best out of our best players, for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, you look at the table, I've had it up for a few minutes. You look at the table, like I said earlier, we finished on 69 points compared to the 63 we finished on last season. So 6 points more, a lot less goals conceded. I think over 20 less conceded in the league. I'm not sure with goals scored exactly in comparison. We can look at last year's table in a minute, but I've seen people try to talk it down. The only reason we're in the top 5 because, bad points records from everyone. I'm like, but that's not true because we came 6th last year and finished 1 point off 5th. So at the fact that we have now 6 points more than that would have made us into the top 4 last season as just as much as it did this season, right? So, and honestly, if City, don't get the win at Fulham, we might have even finished. Obviously, goal difference were worse, so they would have had to lose rather than just draw. But had they lost, we could have even come 3rd. And the fact that we finished the season with the same amount of wins as Arsenal, now obviously a lot more losses than them, 5 more, but still the same amount of wins as Arsenal and just 5 goals less scored than them. You can't be telling me we've been absolutely awful. I understand that people are maybe still not fully happy, because obviously we expect more and stuff, but you can't be telling me that we've had a terrible season, that we're awful and that you believe in nothing that's happening. That's just taking it too far. Now, obviously, I think the majority of people that wanted Maresca out always said if he does make Champions League, we'll obviously keep him. But I think a couple of weeks ago, it was very much reported that even if we don't make Champions League, he would have been kept. I think you made a very, very important point earlier that he is an inexperienced manager. And I think people sometimes ignore and forget that a little bit because I think it makes a big difference. Now, is that ideal in terms of the total club? No, it isn't. But it's not on Maresca that he isn't inexperienced. He didn't hire himself. And I despise the people that always say, well, if you don't feel ready for the job, don't take the job, even if you're offered it. I'm like, that was the Frank Lampard haters were even saying it at the time. I'm like, well, you can't blame Frank for taking the job if it's offered to him. And people were saying, if he was proper Chelsea, he would have known that he's not ready and wouldn't have taken a job. I'm like, no, that's not how it works, man. Maresca got an offer by Chelsea while he was the championship manager. Of flipping course, he's going to say yes. But of course, that's also going to, you're going to see those weaknesses a little bit at the fact that he is so inexperienced. Other than Pep Guardiola, can anybody name me any manager that in his first season or second season was doing this at this level of management? Maybe Zidane, right? You can mention Zidane and you can mention Pep Guardiola. Everybody else was either in much lesser leagues or much lesser clubs when they started. I think you just have to give credit to that as well. Again, I understand that you're not happy with that we have such an inexperienced manager, but you can't hold it against the manager himself, right? Like, no. I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, 100%. I think it is. And I just think sometimes I think it goes past the manager. And I'm not talking about people in this chat. I'm just talking about social media in general and certain other Chelsea fans. But I just feel that they want us to fail and the manager to fail so that they can point the finger at the main problem, which is the board to them. They don't want to see this board do positive things and Chelsea to be in positive places because, in my opinion, they want, there's a big agenda against it. And don't get me wrong, I'm on the fence still with the owners. I'm not saying I'm like fully by their side and yay, we've got to back them and whatever. But, at this moment in time, when we need to be behind the manager and the team and they've managed to progress, in my opinion, they've progressed this season compared to where they were last season. That's only a good thing and it points us in the right direction. My only issue with the 2 years before that or the 3 years before that was because we were regressing as a team rather than improving and spending the money that we were spending and not actually moving anywhere. Now we can sit here and say, actually, we're starting to slowly progress forward. Now it's going to be, okay, we've got Champions League. We're in conference. Now, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that we can stay in Champions League comfortably, do well in the Champions League and try and work our way closer to the top. That's the next step. These are all these are all steps that we have to take as a club. It doesn't work. People go, yeah, but you've got to have standards. We've all still got our standards, but you've got to also understand where we are compared to where we was under Roman. It's completely different, guys. Take the standard thing out of your heads about, Roman this and this is what we should be, this, that, and the other, and understand the actual context of where we are as a football club at the moment. Exactly. And then if you want to criticize them 5-6 years down the line, then that's a different story because we've got a bigger image here. We can go, well, they failed here. They've not got a striker. They haven't done this. We haven't done. It's a different story. That's my frustration with it.
100%. I mean, I am maybe even the way you just spoke. Maybe I'm even more against the owners than you actually are. But that to me doesn't have anything to do with the manager or the team. And I know they are the people that hire them. But even if I'm not happy with the way the owners do things, even if I'm not happy with the fact that these sporting directors are still here, because I think them individually are the bigger problems than the owners, because the owners don't know football like that. So the owners would need better people to tell them otherwise. But the problem is it's the owners that would have to sack the sporting directors. So that's not really going to happen. But within that, why should I make life more difficult for our manager? Now, obviously, I haven't been to a game this season, but people that have, and people that are at the stadium and made the atmosphere toxic and booed the manager and booed the play style and booed and groaned whenever we passed backwards, sometimes when you had to control the game, right? At the end of the day, like JC said, only 5 points behind second place with the youngest team in the league. You'll take that. But there's many different kinds of context. There's the one context where you're like, well, we've spent over 1.5 billion pounds, so we shouldn't even be happy with this. But the fact is, we've spent 1.5 billion or more, but we still have an average squad. We don't have a squad that's as good as Liverpool's. We don't have a squad that's as good as Arsenal's. And on top of that, we don't have a manager that's as good as either of theirs as well. And to then finish 5 points behind Arsenal, 2 points behind Man City. I mean, if I told you before the start of the season we'd finish 2 points behind City, and I'd also told you that the fans would be moaning for the majority of the season, you'd think you're mental. Do you know what I mean? You genuinely would have done. And I mean, talk about Newcastle all you want. Everybody's praising them. Obviously, they've won a trophy. We can still win a trophy on Wednesday. But we finished out of Newcastle. Finished out of Villa, who everybody's like, oh, look at Villa's January transfer window, and look at Newcastle, and look at how everybody's doing this great job. We also did a good job in the grand scheme of things. Big case says Maresca is the first coach to get us into the top four constantly since Sarri.
Because the first coach to get us into the top four. No, that ain't true. Is it?
No, Tuchel did that. Obviously, Tuchel only took over in January.
Lampard got us to the top four, did he?
But we did finish in the Champions League spots.
Yeah, Lampard got us in the top four, I think, as well.
Yeah, sure, maybe it meant that we were in and around the top four for the majority of the season, and it wasn't like a late run like it was when Tuchel came in to take over from Lampard. Maybe that's what he's trying to say. But even still, it's been a minute. Maybe he meant under these owners and kind of forgot to all throughout. I don't know. But yeah, and I think what you said as well in terms of having the standards, we can still have the standards, but be aware that 3 seasons ago now, we finished 12th. You don't go from finishing 12th fully on merit, fully on just being shit and just falling apart as a football club. You don't go from being 12th to winning the league or being nearly as good as the league winner. In the space of 2 years, that doesn't happen, no matter what your standards are. And I know people will come back to, but we finished 10th and then won the league with Conte the next season. Yeah, sure. But you had Hazard and Kante and Fabregas and Matic and John Terry and Gary Cahill and bloody hell, did we still have Courtois in goal then? I think we might have done.
David Luiz, didn't we, as well?
And you're talking to me about, like, we've got Sanchez now. But to be fair, I got to give some credit to Sanchez as well. A lot of people in the chat have as well. He was good today, and he's been good the last few games. I have
4 games. Yeah, 4 or 5 games. I think Sanchez has stepped up, and you know what it is. It's just more of like just doing the basics. He still does really annoying things. Like today, he'll get the ball and he'll just hoof it out, and I'm like, bro, you could have just passed it to your right. Like, why did you you just panic? He just panics sometimes still, you know, and I get it. Like, he's just he's just that guy, isn't it? But like, to be fair to him, the only thing I prayed for today in today's game were just a couple of things. I said we'd win 1-0, had it in my head, but I was praying that Sanchez was not going to, you know, have his one game of, you know, one game of disaster where he just decides he's just going to tarnish everything that we're trying to do, because it does. We have seen it and it has happened. But today he was good. He was commanding his box well. He came out, you know, he had a presence. He was catching the ball as well. He was helping the defense actually deal with Chris Wood every time the balls come in. I don't think there was many shots that he had to like make. So other than the free kick from Elanga where it bounced in front of him and he caught it, I don't think there was much really that he had to do in terms of saves, but everything else was good.
No, he really didn't have to make a lot of saves. I can bring it up. It was 2 supposedly in total. But, you know, like you said, he did play a good game. Did have those 2 saves to make, but he faced 0.12 XG, so not exactly much in it. Obviously, Wood had that one big chance that Tosin maybe got a slight touch on and he put it wide and put it over. It's the long balls again that annoy me a little bit. And this is a theme that we've had over the last few weeks where I just don't really understand. I mean, I was already not really on that when we had Jackson, for example, in that Newcastle game. But when you don't have Jackson, to keep playing long balls, I just don't really understand. Like, there's certain games like today when you're under pressure, it's very much a don't lose game situation. I get that you just want to punt it not to be under pressure. But there's certain games where that is exactly what we had to do to play better. You know, we needed to just pull in that pressure, suck up that pressure, play through it, and then just beat them. Do you know what I mean? But instead we just punted it, lost every second ball, and kind of found it difficult to do well, really. Supposedly Maresca just said F off live, which is kind of funny. So pick up for that. Cattol also said that in the last 10 games we had XG, I guess there would be the average XG throughout those games of 1. Let's call it 4, right? Don't be negative about it. And conceded 1.16. Like, yeah, football is more than these stats, but you touched on this earlier in terms of chances created and big chances missed. Like, yes, we didn't always play pretty, but this is an idea that if you watched every team every week, you would realize most teams don't play pretty every week. Other than City, maybe in those seasons where they got over 100 points and Liverpool behind them on 99. Other than those seasons, teams don't play great every week. That's not a thing. Chelsea didn't either back in 2005 when we got 95 points. We scraped 1-0 wins. We were, got 1 goal from a corner and then set up shop at the back. That's sometimes what you've got to do. I'm not saying it's always the prettiest, but I think as fans, we need to have the awareness that that's sometimes what football is like. I think sometimes people they watch our games and there's certain kind of fans where it's like, they almost forget that there's an opposition playing as well. They only ever focus on what our players do. He was shit. He made a mistake. He didn't score. And and we can't break them down. We can't, create chances. And it's always like, yeah, but that's because the opponents are here as well and are trying their best too. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's not a game of just us playing. By the way, Sports-Why, I'm not sure if you're still here, CJ, but appreciate you for tuning in. Hope you're well, bro. I hope you're very well. But yeah, JC also says something touching before you end the stream. What would be your ideal transfer window this summer? This is something we'll make a separate stream about in the next few days. Maybe we'll touch on it at the very end. But yeah, a couple of people that I want to touch on today. Obviously, Levi Colwill getting the goal. Huge goal. Was it his first goal this season? I can't really remember. But Colwill, Tosin, and also Reece James defensively, I thought all three of them were fucking brilliant. Like, and sometimes you need this, because how weird is it? First half of the season, we were literally thinking the exact opposite about our squad. We were like, yeah, the attack is good. We just need an extra striker so we have a bit more depth, but we score goals for fun, but we can't keep a clean sheet or anything to save our lives. And now the last few months of the season, it's almost a complete reversal of that. And it's the defense that's kind of, defense plus Caicedo, that's kind of bailed us out and made sure that we did get Champions League in the end. So where do you stand on these defenders? Like, especially Tosin, I was like, a couple of months ago, I was like, yeah, he'll get sold in the summer pure profit because he joined on a free.
Yeah.
But now, the way he played these last two games, the way his line-breaking passes are crucial to us. I don't even know. But Colwill, I thought, especially these last few months, really, really stepped up. After he had a few difficult weeks, if you remember. I can't remember the game exactly. He gave the ball away.
Fell on
the floor a bit easily and got slated by the fans. But since then, phenomenal, right?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I recalled, I think 4 or 5 games in a row that Colwill was just not at it. And I even, like, I'll put my hands up. I've not really been the biggest fan of defenders in general. You know, I wanted Chalobah to come back, but even his form dropped a little bit when he came in. Tosin, yeah. I mean, today, if we're talking about today specifically, I was more proud about how we defended more than anything. I just thought Tosin was immense. And do you know what I like about him more than anything? He was my man of the match, by the way, Tosin. But you know what I loved about Tosin today was aerially, he just won everything. You know, he's thrown his body in front of balls, and I like what you said in terms of how he carried the ball when he was punching balls into the middle, even though we didn't really have much of an attack. You know, he's passing that because he was very good. And listen, this is a guy we got for free. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I thought Tosin, you know, strong in the air. I think we missed that so much in his team. We're so short. We're not really good from corners, whether it's scoring them. We're definitely not. But in terms of defending them, we're okay. But, you know, Tosin is he's been so good today. And I mean, Colwill, you know, I've been criticising him a lot. You know, I was half-heartedly thinking maybe he ain't that guy that, you know, everyone bigged up at the beginning of the season. The proper Chelsea fans were saying he's like going to be the new main man at Chelsea. And, you know, it's been an up and down season. I thought him and Fofana at the beginning were still leaking goals, but you could see the chemistry was building, and it got to a point before Fofana got injured where it actually looked pretty good. But then my only issue with our defence still is that I just feel we still need like a commander still. I don't think we have that. You know, I look at Tosin and today, and I actually thought he commanded, he shouted, he was very vocal today, which was very, you know, I think being one of the elders in the team, I think that was, you know, a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but with Tosin, it's just one of them. Like, can you trust Tosin to play for Chelsea Football Club every single day and be one of our main defenders in the team? That's a big question mark. But in terms of this performance that we've seen, whether it's him, Chalobah, or Colwill in his last couple of weeks, have been very, very good. And Reece James, man, I mean, what can we even say about Reece James? I mean, he's just been amazing since he's come back, and he's shown his quality. And the most important thing, again, I feel Maresca deserves a big tick on, is the fact that he's managed him well. You know, he's not just rushed him into games and whatever. We've actually had Reece James for how long? Have we had Reece James for?
He might end up getting injured on Wednesday.
Yeah, I was going to say, how long have we actually had him available since when did he come back from injury? It was beginning of this season. Beginning of
January. I thought you had a small knock and missed like a game or two in between, but essentially he's been fit since January, which is kind of unbelievable. Like, I think he's played nearly 30 games this season, which is wild for him.
Really good. Yeah, and you know, and his qualities are so important. I mean, we know how good he is as a right back. We've seen him play in the midfield. I ain't too comfortable seeing him now. I've always preferred him in his natural position. Defensively strong. He just doesn't get bullied. You know, even Gibbs-White struggled today. Who else was down that wing? Was it not? It wasn't Gibbs. Was it Gibbs-White? It was down the wing against him, or was it Elanga? Elanga was on the right.
Hudson-Odoi, I guess, but yeah.
Hudson-Odoi, yeah. You know, he knows him well enough anyway, and he dealt with him as well. And he brings that extra quality going forward. And we saw against Man United where we need someone to just provide a bit of quality, and that swivel and cross was just impeccable for Cucurella on his head. So yeah. Really, really good, mate.
Exactly.
Really
and think back to, I know we only drew that game as well against Bournemouth, I think, but that free kick is also helped us get a point that is crucial in the end. Yeah. Obviously, you mentioned the assist last week. Couture Criminal mentioned James' last-ditch tackle on Gibbs-White was so important. Yeah, it was important, and it was really good. It was bloody unbelievable. I mean, yeah. JC did say, I still don't think Tosin is good enough to be a Champions League level defender, and he could prove me wrong, though. Honestly, I think this whole Champions League defender is slightly out the window now because I think the Premier League is more difficult than the Champions League. But I'm not saying we are going to go and win the Champions League next season. But the average level is much higher in the Premier League than it is in the Champions League until you get to the last 8 of the competition, in my opinion. So therefore, until the quarterfinal, I think Tosin is probably all right. After that is where it gets a bit more difficult. But this applies to many players in our squad. I mean, it's amazing that obviously we now did it at the end, right? Bloody brilliant. But there's still part of me that thinks, well, we would have also potentially benefited from being in the Europa League, because I'm not really sure our owners are going to invest enough to really make our team Champions League ready. And what I fear is that we're going to need most of the big guns every midweek. Therefore, our league form will suffer. And then next year, I'm concerned that, because this isn't how it works. It isn't the Premier League 15 years anymore, where you're like 15 years ago anymore, when you're like, as long as you're in the top 4, top 5, you're kind of guaranteed to almost keep being there because of all the money you get. There's so many teams now that have big money. There's so many teams now that have the ambition to qualify for the Champions League. You know, Spurs and United obviously shocking this year. They will presumably not be as shocking next year. Will they make top 5 or not? To be honest, I doubt it for both of them. But they will be higher up. You've got Villa, you've got Forest, who will try their best. And then you've obviously got, you know, the likes that you see at the top anyway, Liverpool, Arsenal, City, Newcastle. That's the part I'm slightly concerned about. That with the extra, you know, demands of Champions League next year, that then the Champions League qualification through the league will actually become more difficult. But that's not something to worry about right now. At the end of the day, I want to actually just click this quickly. Like I say, we finished on 69 points and we finished 4th. Let's go on last year's league table. The team that finished 4th finished on 68 points. So we actually finished on 1 point higher than the team that finished 4th last year. Sure, the top 3 had many more points last year than they do now. But why is that? It's because the teams here have a lot more points. You know, Newcastle have 6 more points. We have 6 more points. Obviously, Spurs have a lot less points, but still. And so do Man United. But just the average, I think the mid-table quality, Forest obviously by the end dropped down to mid-table, I guess. But Forest, Brighton, Bournemouth, Brentford, Fulham, Palace as well. Everton, at least once, what's his face? David Moyes took over. These teams are so much better than they were 10 years ago and stuff. And that, or not even 10 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And that's why I hate these people that just talk anything that we do down, in a sense. Well, a few years ago, this league result would have got you 5th or 10th or 7th. It doesn't matter. Like, you can't compare those things. When other teams get better, it's that obviously everybody's point averages drop. That's just what it is. And at the end of the day, it's not about being the best team in history. It's about being the best team, or the best you can be in this current season. You know, every season that the fans don't like the manager, it's like, oh, we only achieved this because the other teams were bad. You know, every time. When it was we only came 3rd because the other teams were bad. Even when Tuchel scraped it when we won the Champions League and we scraped from 9th to Champions League, I was only because the other teams were bad. When Tuchel did it then in his full season, it was only because the other teams were bad. Every time we make it, it's because the other teams were bad. And if we don't make it, it's because we're bad. It's like, well, which is it? I mean, it can't be that. It can't be that simple. It really can't be that simple. I mean, this is maybe also a bit of a next kind of another stream kind of conversation.
Yeah.
But just to quickly ask about this, where are your expectations for next season, Jem? Because Karan says top 2 next season. I still don't think we can win the league, but top 2 or 3 would be great. Do you think in league finishing, you know, number, or do you think in points, or is it just about we need to like look better as a team, even if we finish on like 3 points less, or say a position higher or position lower? It's not, for me, it's not really about a position higher or lower, or a point more or less. Ideally, we'd be closer to the champions, but realistically, I'm not even sure if that's going to be possible, because City are going to be back next year, and Liverpool have kind of bottled it hard after they sealed the league. I don't think they won a game since, have they? Maybe one. So the points total will be higher again next season, I'm expecting. But yeah, so I'm just wondering what do you then want next season? Because you said it earlier, this season it was quite clear: win the Conference League, qualify for the Champions League. That's what we all wanted. But next season, is it again qualify for the Champions League, or is there more?
I think we have to certify ourselves in the Champions League. I also am a firm believer that if we would have had a proper striker up front this season, we would be higher than what we are. because I do think that we would have won some of the games, like at Ipswich at home when we had 34 shots at target. Or was it 34 shots overall with like 16 on target, where we just weren't scoring? It was just one of them games, like, just pulling my hair out. They're the ones that kill me the most, them games. I can't stand them. But yeah, no, I think, it's, for me, it's a very big summer window. A very big summer window. This is our 4th summer window now, right?
Yes.
It'll be our 4th. When the owners first come in, I had this thing in my head where I was like, I'm not gonna overcome for them. I'm going to give them the time. I'm going to see how they progress and see where we are 3-4 years in. I'm happy with what we're doing, or what we've done for this season, in terms of where I think we should be, in terms of the squad, and in terms of, the manager himself, with the, like I said, with the inexperience. But I think now it's about, how do we keep progressing? We have to keep progressing. So progressing for me is solidifying Champions League. I don't want us to be doing what we've done today, leaving it to the last day, fighting, scrapping with 3 or 4 teams. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't happen usually, but it wasn't nice. As a Chelsea fan, we've been in the Champions League for most of the season. It was about us solidifying 2nd or 3rd at that time when we were 2nd and behind Liverpool. And we had a big drop off, and that big drop off wasn't only because we had injuries to key players, but it was because we lacked the quality we still need in the team to be 2nd and stay 2nd, in my opinion. So that striker is a big thing for me. So the summer window is important. We have to get a striker. My issue with the striker is the board. And this is where I'm on side with most Chelsea fans, is I don't know what they're going to do. We don't know what they're going to do, or who they're going to sign, or, how strict, is it just going to be another Jackson, for example, coming through the door very raw, needs a bit of time? Does that really improve us as a squad? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm more of the sort of mindset that if we're going to be Champions League and we're going to try and push for titles next season, number one, we've got to make sure we keep the team fully fit if we can for most of the season, but we've got to add the extra quality in the areas that we haven't done this season. And, I do think we need a striker. I do think we need, the goalkeeper's a bit of an interesting one, because some people think Petrovic is good enough to come in and cover that area, and I get that. The centre backs, I was at the beginning, I was very about us getting another centre back, but then again, it just depends on who goes out the door. If we sell people like Chalobah, how many we're left with, and I also think we need a winger. I think we need a left winger.
Injury struggles, right?
Yeah, exactly. We've got Santos coming into the team next season, who could probably be, involved and bring a lot more depth in the midfield, which I think our midfield is probably the best part of our squad this season in what we've seen. So just improve the areas, and going into next season, it means solidifying Champions League. And if we're like 7, 8, 9 points, 10 points still off the league for whatever reason in 1 or 2 games, at least solidify your position, rather than having to fight for like the last day and try and get Champions League. For me, that's an improvement to this season, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I completely agree. It's a weird one, because, like you say, it's a 4th summer window now. But this is really what it all depends on. I can say, okay, it's also the going into the 4th season under this ownership. So you want progress, you want progression. 2nd season under this manager, young players that are all getting older and should, in theory, all get better. But you touched on it there. We need a striker. Maybe we could do with the goalkeeper. I am actually one of these people that I'm like, give Petrovic a chance, purely because I don't see the goalkeeper market in a sense where I'm like, someone significantly better is necessarily available. Now you could talk about Maignan, but then you have the injury struggles that he's had. You've also, how did it go when Koulibaly came from Serie A to the Premier League? Does it just work like that for Maignan? Does he come in and is perfectly fine? Petrovic has at least played half a season of the Premier League already, and spent a season in France now improving his passing on the floor, which is obviously important for us. Yeah, I'd still take a goalie, but do I think Colwill from Dortmund is so much better than Petrovic? Not really. And I also think, for the fans, believing in the whole idea of the ownership, of the multi-club model and stuff, if you've sent Petrovic on loan there, then you bring him back and he's really good for us. A lot of the fans will be much more on board with that whole idea. While if just go and sign a goalie and sell Petrovic, people are like, well, what's the point? So that's why I just think he's done enough to be given a chance, I think. And just to finish that point, I think what happens in the summer is kind of where I judge on what my expectations are for next season.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if we only signed Delap and a 21-year-old centre-back, why should I expect so much more from next season than I did from this season? We've barely improved the squad then, other than players getting better. Okay, a bit more depth at striker, but realistically, it's not a significant improvement on the whole squad. I think we need a new backup left back, unless Renato Vega stays next season, which I very much doubt. We need a backup left back. I think we need a centre back. Unless Sanchez is okay with being second choice, maybe we should buy a different second choice goalie, even if we keep Petrovic. Like, we just need to fill up the squad again, like we talked about earlier. With the Champions League, we now need a higher level of depth. We can't have Dewsbury all. Dewsbury all needs to go. Dewsbury all can't be the next choice option when Palmer isn't doing well. Like, there needs to be somebody else. Obviously, Andre Santos coming in, like we touched on, that will already improve that area. But and the wingers. Where do you stand on the wingers, Jem? Because obviously, this is kind of the thing that we've constantly been linked to a winger since January, really. Jadon Sancho, are we going to sign him? Are we not? He was kind of bad today, I can't lie, but I still think I'd rather Sancho for 25 than Garnacho for 60 or Gittins for 50. Unless they start being interested in serious wingers, whether it's Rodrigo, even Rafael Leao, just buy Sancho then and leave it at that. I don't really see the necessity of going for a Gittins or a Garnacho. We've got Esteban coming in anyway, who's 18, who will need to be given time to settle in. I think, and I've said this for weeks and months, what this club needs is stability. That's why the manager needs to stay, and that's why we need to stop changing the squad basically completely every summer. Because not only did we do that when the owners first came in, we essentially did it again the summer after. And then we got rid of a few important players last summer with Thiago Silva and Conor Gallagher in terms of leaders of the team. So what we need to do now is not change the squad too much. I think that's really important. Like, add a few pieces, but don't sell 8 and buy 10 again. Don't do that. Just keep it relatively the same and just improve the few pieces that we need to improve.
But then it's just about who, like you said, who is it going to be, and how do we, at what level of quality do we then go and improve it? Are we going to waste the whole summer again just going back and forwards with Victor Osimhen, like trying to get him to accept a wage roll because we don't want to pay an extra 30, 40, 50 or K or whatever the reason is? Do you know what I mean? Like, is that going to be an issue? Don't get me wrong, that type of quality of striker, that's what we should be going for. I'm a big fan of Victor Gyökeres. I think he's someone that could also come into this team and score a lot of goals. I know people moan about it's very transitional. He's only scored 4 headers out of the 50 goals that he's scored. But the one thing you can't knock these type of players for, and why you paid a 60, 70 millions for them in the market, which is what they are, is because of their goal records and because they can actually score different types of goals. And if someone can, for 4 seasons in a row, score 17, 29, 54, or whatever it is, that's a good example of someone that if you create enough for him, he's going to take them Jackson chances. He's going to have, their moments then change because they convert it, and that's the quality. That's what I'm trying to get at. The quality level's there. Delap, I get. Everyone goes, he works hard. He gives people problems. He runs right. He goes left. He's proper. But we need, I keep stressing, I've said it for so long now, we need a box presence. Someone that's got that just has that, like that old striker way, Laurenz, like that old, them typical attributes of an old type striker where they just know where to be when the ball comes in the box, and bang, in them moments they take them chances. And I'll tell you now, if we can find someone like that, and people say Sesko could be that and whatever, I don't know. All these Seskos and Delaps and is it Ekitite or whoever he's there? I don't really know that guy, but these players are all like if and buts all the time. And then you've got Gyökeres and Osimhen, where you can look at it and go, so you can have your moans because they've got slight weaknesses and how they might fit into Chelsea, but they score goals, and it's like, what do you do? You know what I mean? Like, how do we? What did Chelsea do with this? And it's just about, like, if we're going to go and get a striker, I'd rather take the risk and go and get one of them two than probably go and sign another young lad and just hope with Jackson, because that doesn't answer the questions for me, Yeah. And also, just to touch on the left wing, we've got Quenda coming in 2026, who's meant to be very highly rated.
Like, do we just stopgap for the year then? So then do you keep Sancho and try to sell him for profit in a year?
I agree with you. I don't think if Sancho is just strictly a squad player for 20 million and we can get away with having him with Madueke and Neto and George, and I don't know if we're going to sign one more or whatever, then fine, get away with it. And I forgot Esteban. This guy does look special, don't get me wrong, but I agree he's going to need the time. There's not, Chelsea fans go, but we need goal scoring wingers. They need to contribute. I agree with you. We do need goal scoring wingers, but guess what? There isn't any Mo Salahs in the market. There just isn't. Name me a winger that's, everyone's screaming Rodrigo for 80 million. Quality player. But guess what? He hasn't scored more than 10 league goals since he's been at Real Madrid. And he's played 30 plus games. So, like, what are we doing here when it comes to this? Don't just go out and expect us to spend money on 80, 90 million players because of who they play for and whatever. They're good players, and whatever. I understand that. But, a lot of people's demands is goals. But we don't I don't know we strictly know if the market has that. Do you get what I mean? In terms of what they want.
Exactly. My worry is that, because I completely agree with you, we need a box presence. Now, on the one hand, someone with an instinct that will just know where to be and, be one of these strikers to just, rather than always doing everything right, has this almost gift that the ball falls to him rather than that they're always where the ball is. It's a bit of some strikers just have that gift.
Yeah.
And maybe Gyökeres is one of these strikers. But to me, a striker that has scored 4-headed goals isn't a box presence. Like JC said here, we need a Giroud. If we had Giroud and add Gyökeres, amazing. But because we have Jackson, I think if you add Gyökeres, yes, you add someone more clinical, but you don't really add any more physical presence up front to me. So it's like, I'm not sure if it quite does it. Now, Osimhen would provide that part. With Osimhen, I just very much worry about the attitude, about the off-the-pitch drama that he causes. I just, in Osimhen, see a Lukaku 2.0. Yes, a good player, but too much of a problem. And also too high wages for how much of a problem they are. So I have a few times said, I'm okay with getting Delap and, creating the competition for Jackson and Delap up front. Now, Jackson's obviously recent number one form, but also number two, obviously the red card against Newcastle, does make you question that a little bit. But like JC said, we need a Giroud. If you gave me Chris Wood now, would I be fairly happy with that? I kind of would, even though, get Chris Wood and Gyökeres. How about that?
If you got Delap and Gyökeres, I actually think we should be putting more of our attention and money into the striking area. That's what I believe. I don't think we should just rely on Jackson being the second. I'd get two. I'd get a Gyökeres and I would get a Delap, or I'd get someone to go along with. I like Mateta. I actually think he's quite useful, just as a second striker, like someone that has that presence in the box, can change the game and whatever. Yes, Gyökeres doesn't score many goals with his head, but he's, like I keep saying, he's clinical in different ways and he's variety. And I just think it would solve a lot of problems for us in terms of scoring. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. I just, that the games that we really struggle with, those, whether it's home or away, those teams that they just sit back really, really deep. We don't have our best day, and then we struggle to break it down, and we end up putting in cross after cross after cross. I already know it. If we now have Jackson and Gyökeres as our option next season, and then we're going to punt in cross after cross, and then we don't score, everybody's going to say, well, of course you can't score headers. He's only scored 4-headed for Sporting. So you can already see that happening. But this
that is partly because of how they play as well, though. Can I just say, because I do watch it, but it's not that he can't header a ball. He scored some goals.
Yeah. That's I get you mean as well, though. Like if you get Delap, he's not experienced playing for us. He's not experienced playing against the low block. He's been at Ipswich. He's not seen a low block against him. But just to touch on this comment here by Pierre, he says you don't need goal-scoring wingers if you have multiple clinical strikers. There are lots of creative wingers, a lot more creative wingers than goal-scoring ones, which is partly true.
Yes.
But I think this kind of goes back to fans, like I said earlier, that pretend like we play against mannequins. We play against opponents. Certain opponents make it more difficult to score through the middle, through your striker, no matter how good your striker is. Some teams make it more difficult for that striker to score than others. And so you need to have goals from various areas of the pitch. You need some goals from midfield. You need some goals from your striker, the majority of goals from your striker. But you also need some goals to come in from your wingers. You need to. Like, think of Didier Drogba, the best striker we've ever had. He wasn't scoring every game. He had games where he struggled to get on the score sheet. The same for Diego Costa. Like Diego Costa had scored 20 goals twice, but he scored more than on one occasion. He scored 2 goals in a game, sometimes a hat-trick. So that tells you he's more than half the games of the season he didn't score. And that's Diego Costa. And think about how we think of him. So yes, I disagree with you, Pierre. You need goals from various areas of the pitch because certain opponents make it more difficult in certain areas. I just quickly want to big myself up for a moment. I tweeted this, you can see, on the 22nd of May. So in the middle of the week. I said, I can't tell you why, but I'm so optimistic about Sunday and the final. Even if Chelsea only get a draw on Sunday, I think someone around us will drop points and we'll stay in the top 5 regardless. And somehow, I've been double right. Because on the one hand, we won. And on the other hand, all the other teams around us, other than City, did drop points. So it's like, it certainly went well in that sense. And I'm also still very, very confident for the final against Betis, because I know everybody's breaking their trophy droughts, Palace, Spurs, all these lot. I get it. But we're just too good for them, and I will stand by this.
Even with Anthony scoring the goals that he's scoring, and don't get me wrong, he's a different player at Betis than he is at Man United. Don't get me wrong, they've got Isco and some other individuals, but we should be, they're a better level than what we have been playing in the Conference League. That's for sure. We've just been sort of foddling along there and doing what we need to do. But with a decent lineup put out. And Jackson being back, by the way, because he can play, can't he, in the Conference League as well. This is obviously a boost in a way, even though I don't know what Jackson's going to turn. I kind of feel like Laurenz, he owes us one. It's that one game where I feel like he owes us the pain that we've gone through the last couple of games because we've not had a striker because of his stupidness against Newcastle. So I'm hoping that he kind of comes out a bit with a fire in his belly and he puts one or two in the back of the net.
Imagine he comes up with a hat-trick in the final. People will be very quiet instantly, I think.
Yeah,
that's how it goes. But we touched on this earlier. Someone in the chat said it, but here we've got the actual quote of Maresca dropping the F-bomb. Maresca asked about critics who doubted Chelsea's young team and mentality, and he said, in English, I would say, F off to all of them. I do appreciate that. Yeah, I like that. By the way, AB,
that's a better way to respond than it has been in the past.
Exactly. He seemingly didn't censor himself and said F off. He seemingly said, F-U-C-K off, but I don't really care. It's Sky's money that's, out the window.
But he's right, though, Laurenz, because that team is the youngest squad in Premier League history that we've put together. And, people don't realise.
Well. I think in Europe. Strasbourg, but I'm not sure. I'm not even sure.
In that terms, there's a lot of progression. Yeah, exactly. If you look at it from that term, it's like, that's pretty impressive. I know it's took us a bit of time to get to Champions League, but it's a bit impressive that he's managed to do that with a young squad already, So let's hope we can just keep moving forward with the experience every year, which they're all getting, which is important. And I'm pretty sure this was the board's plan. Bringing a lot of these youngsters, even though I think they've overdone it and they've made some stupid signings that they shouldn't have made. But the overall idea of bringing in Enzo, Caicedo, Lavia, Cucurella, these players was to eventually, hopefully, that they would click and have the experience going through this teething process. And then with that experience, they start hitting their peaks of their game and start bringing some silverware to this club. That's what we're hoping for.
That is what we're hoping for. And just to reply to this comment by AB from earlier, is it top 4 or top 5 for the Champions League next season? Well, as of now, top 4, but almost certainly top 5 because it comes through the UEFA coefficients and got games won, and the fact that Chelsea now have England now have 6 teams in the Champions League makes that even easier because we have the most teams in the competitions, so therefore we also have more teams gaining points for the coefficient, which is a bit unfair. I'm not sure if they shouldn't find a different way of calculating these points, but as a fan of a Premier League team, I suppose we'll take it. I suppose we will take it. I kind of want to finish it on this by Chelsea tweeting, "See you soon, Champions League." I think that is a nice picture to finish it off on. I say finish it off on, but it's good to be back, isn't it? It's been a difficult couple of years. Now, I enjoyed the Europa League in the 18-19 season when we ended up winning it. I went to a fair few of the away games, had a great time. This season, unbeatable. I'm also not a fan of the format where it's like you play certain teams only away and certain teams only at home. It's a bit crap, I think. But I know some people like it. I've not really been a fan, if I'm being honest. But it's just so good to be back in the Champions League too. I'm already so excited for the Champions League draw in September. I mean, like that draw. Obviously now with the league phase, it's a bit different, I guess, than the groups were. But even still, you find out your opponents. I'm already so looking forward to it. I'm sure all of us are, but I'm sure you are too, right, Jim?
I think it's one of them things, and I've said this for a while, that we've been on the sidelines. Champions League doesn't feel right without having Chelsea in it. I don't care what anyone says. Chelsea just bring... When it comes to representing their countries, Chelsea just bring this extra excitement. Whether we win or lose in the Champions League, the examples of 3-1 behind against Real Madrid with Benzema scored that hat-trick and we go over to the Bernabeu and score 3 goals and nearly beat him and Rodrigo done us at the end. Even though we went out, we always bring that sort of, that character in this tournament. And it's just, I don't know, it's like, I don't know, we just seem to always step up in these Champions Leagues. That's why I'm excited, because we do. It's just... it feels so good to be able to hear that that anthem again, at our stadium, that anthem coming and ringing around the stadium. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. And I think it's going to be good experience for these youngsters as well. These young players that haven't played Champions League, like Caicedo, for example, and Lavias. This is going to be the step up for them, right? Because now they're going to be on the big stage, to be able to really show what they're about. So yeah, this is where we should be for sure.
This is where we should be, and this is where we deserve to be. And I think you can say, in hindsight, maybe I need to bring up the league table one more time. I think you can say in hindsight that we did deserve it. Like, we finished fourth. We finished, in the end, well, I guess 3 points ahead of not being in the Champions League, but also 3 points ahead of another spot that's in the Champions League. We've been in the top 4, top 5, the large majority of the season. There was like, what, 1 or 2 games? What's happened? Why has that happened then? There's been like 1 or 2 games, I think, where we dropped maybe down to 6th or 7th. But for the large majority of the season, we've been in the top 4. So you can't be telling me that we don't deserve to be in the top 4 now. So yeah, I think in the grand scheme of things, we've absolutely deserved it. I think I'm very happy. But what we cannot forget, we need to now get the job done on Wednesday, because I know there was a lot of people arguing, okay, if you had to pick one, win against Forest, make Champions League, or win against Real Betis in the Conference League. Honestly, I picked winning the Conference League over winning today, purely because not winning the Conference League would be the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to us in our club's history, and I don't really want that to happen, especially had we finished Europa League. Yes, not ideal, but there was arguments to be made that was positive for the squad anyway. But we need to now win. We need to win that, and hopefully, obviously, have a good Club World Cup too. But that's for a later day. But are you as confident as I am for Wednesday? I know what you said on Anthony, right? By the way, what I just wanted to say on that, he's also not being defended by Cucurella in any of these games. So I am not particularly concerned, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that is true. I just want us to complete the set. I know it sounds very what's the word? I don't care. Shameless. That's the word. I don't care if it sounds shameless. I want us to complete this. Be the first team to complete the set of European trophies. And if it means we have to, and if people go, I don't care about this, I do, because do you know why? I think it's very important that this young group of players get used to tasting silverware. How many finals have we been? Liverpool in the finals, FA Cups, Carabaos, and we've lost 1-0 or Van Dijk header or whatever, and we've ended up losing with this core group of players. It's important that they get a taste of what it feels like to win and have that behind them. And yes, it's only a Conference League, but it's a European trophy at the end of the day. They need to make sure they get it done. It'll bring a bit more confidence going into the Club World Cup as well. And look, that's a brand new tournament. Who knows what's going to happen with that? Imagine winning that first as well. That would be even more exciting. It would. So anything can happen from now to these next two I'll say the tournament and this next game that we've got coming up. But it's important that, like I said, it's important that they win. We have to get used to winning again. Chelsea are used to winning silver. They have to get a taste of it, because if they lose this, we're always going to have the same problem where they're not used to winning things. You get to finals, they bottle it. Mentality,
you're not
blah,
get
blah,
an
blah.
Final than this anywhere.
You're not. So they've got to win. They have to win for me. It's important.
They absolutely do. And like Sammy said, can't let Spurs have a more successful season than us. And, because for me, by the way, ridiculous that Brighton gave them a guard of honor today for a Europa League. That is embarrassing. More from Brighton than from Spurs. It's not Spurs' fault, that. But
Liverpool gave one to Palace, didn't they, as well?
Yeah, but I think that's almost fair, because that's domestic. Do you know what I mean? And is at least the peak cup, while the Europa League. Okay, it's like Liverpool giving Leeds a guard of honor for winning the championship. I'm like, why? Do you know what I mean? You're not going to do that. But what I wanted to say is, because of there not being a drop down from the Champions League to the Europa League anymore, I don't really see a difference between the Europa League and the Conference League much. In most leagues, there is one league table finish difference, whether you make Conference League or Europa League. Spurs played Bodo Glimt. No disrespect to them. They got past Lazio and everything else. Well done to them. But they're in the Arctic Circle. Their stadium holds 8,000 people and they're playing an artificial pitch. Are you telling me that's any different to what we played in Djurgården? Absolutely not. Do you know what I mean? We played bigger atmospheres in the Conference League than Spurs did in the Europa League. It's no more of a bigger achievement for them to winning the Europa League than it is for us winning the Conference League, in my opinion. Sure, that's my perspective. I get that. But just get the job done. Just get the job done. Ladies and gentlemen, 100%. I think it's about time we wrap this one up. Thank you very, very much to everybody that has tuned in today. Thank you very much to Jem for joining me today. We're back in Europe. not just in Europe. We're back in the Champions League. We're back with the big boys.
Yeah.
Finished top 4. Didn't even need the pity extra spot. Didn't even need 5th. We got it done in 4th anyway. No matter what, we got it done. I am buzzing. I am very, very buzzing. Ladies and gentlemen, me and myself and Pice are going to record our podcast called Chelsea Unfiltered literally in the next hour to put it out, well, tonight. So make sure you check down the link down in the description for our podcast. Follow it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, whichever platform you do use. So check that out. Of course, check out Chem's socials. I put his Twitter down below. I put his YouTube down below. I know he doesn't use it that much anymore, but check it out regardless. Get involved. Drop a follow. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Yes. Up the Chelsea, upwards and onwards. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time.
Up the Chelsea.